Hey, it's John. Welcome back to the show, and welcome back to the latest edition of the Live Cuts. Premise of this series is to talk about live albums that don't get enough love or recognition. But before we discuss the album today, let me introduce you to my distinguished guests. You may know them from their wonderful work on the YouTube music discussion channel, Grab a Stack of Rock. They are deep into, and yes, there is the logo that I should acknowledge when Mike points to it. They are deep into a weekly series on Iron Maiden that's been going on about 16 months now. It'll probably go on for another 25 months. Harrison Kopp and Mike Ladano, welcome to my show.
Thank you, John. You know what, though? That's not just a logo. That's an actual 45. That's got the theme song on it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Excellent. Very good.
Yeah.
Harrison, welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here. I do love live albums. As longtime viewers of the show will know, they are probably my favorite things in music.
Awesome. We're going to have a great time today. Harrison recommended this album, and personally, I'm glad he did because I wasn't familiar with it, and this is a burner. This is an archival live album by Rainbow, Boston, 1981. This was released on May 13, 2016 on Purple Pyramid Records. This is a recording of their second show at the Orpheum Theatre in Boston, Massachusetts on the Difficult to Cure tour. This recording was from May 7, 1981. The musicians who played on this album are the incomparable Ritchie Blackmore on guitar, Roger Glover on bass guitar, Joe Lynn Turner on lead vocals, Don Airy on keyboards, and Bobby Rondinelli on drums. Now, I would like to ask you both, when did you first get familiar with Rainbow's music? Harrison, I'd like to start with you.
All right, so I don't know the exact date because it's been quite a few years, but it was sort of early, I'd say like 2019, 2020-ish. For reference, I only sort of m met Mike virtually at the end of like 2017, I think. So at this point, I was still like reading through his blog, all the backlog, and I stumbled across Rainbow Live in Munich, his review of that 77. I think that was the very first time that I actually went and checked out Rainbow, and I really liked that. And sure enough, I started then diving into the other eras, and I would have picked this up not much later after giving it a quick listen on YouTube and being like, yeah, this good.
Very good. And Mike, when did you first get into Rainbow's music?
2017 live in Munich when I wrote that review that Harrison. No, I'm joking. That's actually a pretty cool moment that he just said there. Like you could see the expression on my face. For him to read my blog and discover Rainbow, that's a pretty cool, heavy moment for me, personally speaking. So I'm a little taken aback there. I discovered Rainbow, I'm thinking about 85. And it was the music video for Death Valley Driver,
Okay.
featuring this lineup. I think no, Don Airy didn't play on that album. That was Rosenthal, I think, played on that album. But almost this lineup. It was the album following this tour. So that kind of, I was kind of like, who are this band? Like Rainbow didn't sound like a very metal kind of name, and I was very much into the metal at that time exclusively. But I gave it a try and I dug it. And I thought, well, this is a cool band. Like there's some really cool guitar playing going on there with that weird looking Pilgrim guy that's in this band that I think I've also seen in another band. But I was still connecting the dots, like at this point in my childhood, in my youth. I was still connecting the fact that Dio was in Rainbow and Black Sabbath and Dio and all this other stuff. So it kind of was an opening door. And they didn't have very many music videos. Stone Cold was another one from that period. So it wasn't really until much later on where I started actually buying albums that I familiarized myself with this era of Rainbow and Rainbow in general. And I would say that happened, me buying the albums and really digging in, that happened 1995. So a 10-year span of growth, of learning, I guess, before taking the plunge.
Okay. I heard them probably 81 or 82. It would have been when Stone Cold was the single. I remember Stone Cold getting played on pop radio here. And I hit number 40 here in the States. And I would also hear them on Rock 107, our classic rock station, WEZXFM, Scranton, Pennsylvania. When Street of Dreams was the single the next year, I would hear that on pop radio and Rock 107 as well. As time went on, you didn't hear those songs much on our classic rock station. But what you started hearing were the songs from Down to Earth, most notably All Night Long and Since You've Been Gone. That's the latter one, Since You've Been Gone, is probably the one you hear the most around my parts to this day. I didn't know that Ronnie James Dio was in Rainbow until the late 80s. I first got into Ronnie James Dio through his own band Dio and Holy Diver. And a little bit later, then I heard Mob Rules and Heaven and Hell, and then I knew Rainbow Rising, Richie Blackmore's Rainbow, Long Live Rock and Roll. So, but yeah, Rainbow didn't get played a lot around here, but during the time that Stone Cold and Street of Dreams were singles, you definitely heard them. So, we're going to talk about this archival live album today. The set list that is on this recording is the exact set list they played that night at the Orpheum Theatre on the first date of the 2 dates they played. That's not on this recording. This is the second dates. I was able to find that Pat Travers and John Butcher Axis were also on the bill. I'm gathering this was a co-headline with Pat Travers because this is about an hour and 5 minute recording here. I'm gathering Pat Travers played about the same because at that time, Pat Travers was still near his commercial peak here in the United States. He hit his commercial peak with Live Go For What You Know and then Crash and Burn with the song Snortin' Whiskey. And I believe this would have been the next album, which would have been Black Pearl. So we're going to talk about this album today. We're going to talk about what we like about this album, what we may not be so crazy about. So, Mike, I'm going to ask you first. What are things that really jump out at you about this album? Maybe not so much songs, but as far as the performances.
I'm so glad you asked. You know, we seem to be so much in sync these days with questions and answers. I gotta say, it was track two, Down Here Below. Oh, wait, no, that was another album that we did a couple of days ago. No, in all seriousness, that album that we did a couple of days ago has been stuck in my head all day today, and it's been hard to focus on the Rainbow with all those great Steve Earle songs still circulating in my head. But I did play this album 3 times today, again. And I got to say that one thing of the many things that jump out at me is Don Airey. And, you know, as soon as I heard the organ stuff happening, I was like, there's no question. This is the guy that was destined. You know, God forbid that John Lord ever needed to be replaced in Deep Purple. This is the guy that was destined to do it. I love his keyboard work all through the album. He's really complimentary to Blackmore all throughout. I think it sounds like Don Airey has so much fun when he plays keyboards. And if you ever see him on video playing keyboards, he is having fun. He is having so much fun doing it. Um, he brings a musical sophistication that Blackmore also brings to the band. You know, really a good counterpoint to Ritchie. You look at someone like Roger Glover, and he's also a good counterpoint to Ritchie in a different way. Roger Glover would never describe himself as a schooled musician the way that Blackmore wanted him to be. You know, Glover was kind of proud of the fact that he didn't practice, and Blackmore kind of wished that he would have practiced more and been able to do these, but there's still really great unison stuff happening with Don and Roger and Richie throughout the album. It's a really technical album, and I just think, aside from spotlighting Don Airey, giving him the VIP on this album, personally speaking, the musicianship throughout is really tight. And so, in answer to your question, Don Airey is the one thing that jumps out first and foremost, with musicianship in general as the second thing.
Okay, very good. And Harrison, what really stands out for you on this album?
What leaps out to me the most on this album is the strength of Joe Lynn Turner's performance. Now, for those who aren't familiar with Joe Lynn Turner, he went through a pretty steep vocal decline, I think, starting with like tracks that you get here on Final Vinyl from the Budokan. They're just not as strong. They're still pretty darn good, but they're just not as strong as the ones here in 1981. And then by the time you get to 1991 with his stint in Deep Purple, you're getting this is a bootleg, but you're getting an album here that can be pretty unlistenable at times depending on the song. But this is Joe Lynn Turner at his absolute peak, his stone cold peak, if you want a little bit of a pun there. He
Yes.
is incredibly powerful. His voice is soaring, and the fact that this is an archival release means it's lesser known, which is a shame because it's such a strong performance, even compared to 1982's Live Between the Eyes video release from Texas. And I thought this is sort of like going on to the next area, but the production on this album, at least, to my ears, comparing to the Live Between the Eyes and Budokan tracks here on Final Vinyl. Now, this is a West Germany printed CD from way back, but I can tell that the sound quality of Boston here is far superior to those Budokan and those Texas. It sounds like almost crystal clear, I'd say. It's a fantastically recorded album. So, like Mike said, you can hear all that great musicianship.
So I agree 100% with what both of you said. So I'm not going to repeat that. What really comes out at me, because when we talked about doing this, I went back, I listened to Music 1977, I listened to On Stage, I listened to Final Vinyl, I listened to the one from Houston that has Graham Bonnet on it. Here, Richie Blackmore is the leader of Rainbow, whereas before he was the star of Rainbow. You knew it was Richie's band on Munich 77 because he is throwing in so many different solos, so many unaccompanied solos. The songs are really, really stretched out. So he gets to do his thing. On here, they sound like a band, a tight band, but Richie's the leader. So it's a lot more cohesive to me. It's a lot tighter than what you hear on Munich 77. As far as both of your sentiments, I agree 100%, particularly on Joe Lynn Turner's vocal performance on here. I think it is magnificent. The recording, yes, the recording I do think is superior as well. And Don Airey, yes, he is all over this album. And the interplay with him and Richie is wonderful. Excellent. So, as far as the tracks would go, what do you both think would be like your favorite tracks on the album? And Mike, I'll start with you.
That's a good question. And I'm going to go for my first pick here with As Love's No Friend. I was listening to that earlier, and I found it to be a really good, a striking version. That's a down to earth track that originally featured Graham Bonnet. So we're hearing Joe's spin on a Graham Bonnet track, actually for the first time on this album. And I think it's really great as far as the vocal interpretation goes. I love Joe's version of it. Both guys have very differing styles, but Joe seems very adaptable too. Um, I wrote down that there's loads of solos and great airy organ, so we're going to be hearing a lot of praise for Don Airey from me tonight. I wrote that Joe's vocal is very bluesy and expressive, and I had a question here, which is, do you guys hear Roger Glover on backing vocals on this track? Did you guys notice that? Because I hear a backing vocalist,
Yes,
and I'm okay.
yes,
Yeah. So I was like, that's cool. I'm hearing a backing vocalist, and it's Roger Glover. So that's cool.
very good. And Harrison, your what would be a standout track?
Honestly, it would be easier for me to pick my least favorite song. I remember, this is going to be funny,
I
but I
know what
remember
my least
making
favorite is too, by the way.
I remember making a mix CD version of this album where I just got rid of Love's No Friends because it was the one track that I wasn't like intimately familiar with, and it was like this is a bit slow and stuff. I want to get to the good stuff, but no, I do enjoy Love's No Friend. At the moment, Joe has this soulful, silky vocals, but as you see on songs like Spotlight Kid, like Lost in Hollywood, he's got this incredible power and his range is still intact, but. My favorite would probably have to be either Man on the Silver Mountain or Can't Happen Here. Man on the Silver Mountain, I haven't heard a bad version of that song, even by Van Halen, but that's a tangent for another day. Um, Man on the Silver Mountain, Joe interpolates, this like lower baritone with like really going for it, and Can't Happen Here is just really fast, up tempo goodness. And like Mike sort of pointed out earlier, Mr. Roger Glover himself is on backing vocal. But speaking of backing vocals, so this album is sort of like the convergence of a whole bunch of different timelines onto this one point. So, like we talked about, it's before Joe's vocal troubles sort of started declining. It's also at a time when right before they got the female backing vocals in. Now, I don't always, mind female backing vocals in my Rainbow, but sometimes I want to hear them without them. So this album doesn't have, I don't think it was Candace Knight at the very beginning, but there were female vocals. And you've also got, this album is it's the first Joe Lynn Turner era tour, so they're still using a fair amount of Bonnet and Dio tracks here. So you get a really, really good, almost I'd say definitive look at the history of the band up until this point. I'd say if you switched out Love's No Friend for Since You've Been Gone, you'd have had a perfect album, and the CD would have combusted due to the sheer awesomeness of it.
I love Catch the Range Well. I think this is soaring. I
Hmm.
if a song is giving me goosebumps, then it's my favorite track. And Joe shines like the sun on this. I like the fact that it's less bloated than what you have on the Munich 77 version. It's a tighter version. It's 14 minutes, yet it works at 14 minutes. It's 18 minutes on Munich 77. And there, I think it drifts a lot. Here, I think everything works. I like the ebb and flow of the playing on here, particularly, but Joe is the standout on here. I think his vocal is tremendous. And at the last 2 minutes when he says shine and then the crowd singing back to him, I think that is wonderful. At that point, I mean, I'm thinking, when Joe was doing this every night, Richie's like, okay, I got the right guy, because
Yeah.
he is fantastic on this track. I'd like to point out one more song as well. The opening track after Somewhere Over the Rainbow, which was the intro to their shows back then, probably for a long time after. Spotlight Kid is ferocious. They're playing this a lot faster than what you have on the original version on Difficult to Cure. They're on fire on here. And Richie and Don are driving each other on this track. And Roger and Bobby are chugging like a locomotive. They are wicked rhythm section throughout this album. And I also love the fact that you can really hear Roger on this album on bass,
Hmm.
particularly on these songs that are more fast paced. So those two really shine for me, but for different reasons. But I think they're both magnificent.
Yeah. I would argue that Richie's ability to pick vocalists is just as good as his guitar playing ability. And I think albums like this are evidence of that because we have songs like Catch the Rainbow, and on the Donington album from 1980 with Bonnet, you have a song like Stargazer, and these are songs that are traditionally associated with the Ronnie James Dio era. And yet, I think you can look at those albums and be like, that's a highlight of that album, even though it's not Dio himself singing. And then later on, when he gets in Doogie White and Ronnie Romero, and just he has a fantastic knack for picking the right vocalists. And the last thing I remember I wanted to say, like you mentioned, we are coming out of that long Blackmore Jam stage, so we have more just one and done songs like Can't Happen Here, done.
Yes.
Short, sharp, finished. No long drum solo afterwards.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we have a lot. Can Happen Here is shorter here, down to studio version. Long Live Rock and Roll is it's very, very tight. So yeah, so yes, we know Richie's still doing enough that we know he's the leader, but it's about the songs more than it is about the jamming on this.
Even Lost in Hollywood is like a complete song before it immediately goes right into Difficult to Cure. And I guess you would say the dedicated jam section where, you get a bit of a keyboard solo, a bit of a guitar solo, a bit of a drum solo, but it doesn't go on for 30 minutes like Munich.
Right, like Still I'm Sad.
Now, Still I'm Sad did have a phenomenal finale to all of that. I know one does not usually speak ill of Made in Japan, but I would argue that the sort of tepid petering out of Space Trucking is nowhere near as good as the thunderous crashing of Still I'm Sad coming back for one last sort of finale.
Very good.
But that's getting a bit off topic now.
Well, no, that's what we do here. What do you both think of the last track, which is Smoke on the Water, but is actually kind of more of a medley?
Hmm.
I'll start with you, Mike.
Well, oh, sorry, I was just going to say right off the bat, Purple Pyramid had the decency to not tell you that you're in fact getting a Woman from Tokyo in there, cough cough, made in Europe, I think it was. Um, yeah, I read when I read the liner notes, it went on about how this was a special moment because they didn't often play Smoke on the Water. It was usually an encore, and this is going on another sidebar, but here, Final Vinyl on Wikipedia, Final Vinyl says that Can't Happen Here. Uh, on the back of the disc, it says it was recorded at the Nassau Coliseum, Uniondale, 1981. But then Wikipedia says, no, 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 it was recorded at Boston. That's a load of rubbish. Just a simple A/B test listen will tell you that is not the case. They sound completely different. In fact, you'll know by it before the song even starts because Joe Lynn Turner's Final Vinyl intro is completely different to his one on Boston. But I did look up the set list from that Nassau Coliseum show, and Smoke on the Water was indeed not played there. So I'm glad that we got a live album release where we got like a bit more than usual because I remember the Deep Purple Live in London show is sort of not famous is not the word I'd use, but it's notable that the band did not play an encore that day, so we missed out on Highway Star and another song that we could have got on the live recording. But yeah, I love this version of Smoke on the Water. It's a version that all the Joe Lynn Turner versions I've heard he does really well, including the one from Brazil here in 1991. I think it's a highlight of that show. Not that there are many highlights of that show, but I'd definitely say Smoke on the Water is. I love his interpretation of the song. And as Mike has pointed out, John Arry is a more than fitting replacement for John Lord.
No doubt. And Mike, your thoughts on Smoke on the Water?
I really enjoyed when the track started, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's not on the back of the CD. Woman from Tokyo. Hey, that's cool. And I really enjoyed hearing that bit of Lazy and Woman from Tokyo in there. I love the idea of including those little bits as you said, as a medley. And that kind of idea might have been fresh in '81, but we're so used to it now. Where Deep Purple have, like, I'm thinking of the what was the live album that they did after Battle
Well,
Rages
Steve
On?
Morse would always go on that instrumental sort of tangent, go interpolating all these different riffs before Smoke on the Water in the later years of the band.
But on the one live album that they did after The Battle Rages On, they kind of snuck in Lazy and Woman from Tokyo as Japanese bonus tracks that really weren't bonus tracks at all. It was really just part of a medley. And so I'm kind of used to this idea, and I like it. I really do. And as Harrison said, Joe Lynn Turner really does a fantastic version of Smoke on the Water. Probably one of the best singers to do Smoke on the Water. Um, it's funny because, we live in this world now where Blackmore's Rainbow came back with Ronnie Romero and packed their set full of Deep Purple songs. And so it's kind of funny, that there's only one Deep Purple song in this set, but it's also a testament to the great material that they had at hand of their own originals. And there's so many great ones here. Um, we talk about how they did Lazy and Woman from Tokyo as kind of unlisted medley, but they also snuck Greensleeves into Catch the Rainbow. Dun, 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 dun. It's a really nice moment there in the middle of Catch the Rainbow. They're so good at doing that. Just putting bits of key music into other bits of key music and just turning it into something special live. I really liked it. Yeah, Smoke on the Water. Now, the only complaint that I would have is maybe they should have ended the set with their own original song and maybe have Smoke on the Water second last. But
Well,
uh,
Smoke on the Water was an encore. Sorry to interrupt. So they did end the set with Long Live Rock and Roll.
okay. I'm still not sure how I feel about Smoke on the Water, a Deep Purple song being the last one played. But Blackmore knows better than I do, so we'll leave it at that.
One thing I'll say about
Hmm.
Smoke on the Water, Richie's guitar sounds really hot on here. It when it's just him playing, when he's playing electric, he sounds loud. But it's more rock and roll when that guitar sounds more rough. So that's something that really jumped out at me when he went into the first riffs of Smoke on the Water. But I think it is a very strong version. One thing that I really noticed about here, we're going back to Joe again. Joe sounds confident. This is his first tour. He's already thrown in ad libs. He's not communicating a lot with the crowd yet, but you're already hearing that he's throwing in ad libs and really feeling it when he's singing live. I really got that on here, particularly on the track Smoke on the Water. He's throwing in the ad libs, which I think is really cool. We were talking about, okay, this is where I like to, something will come in my head while you guys are talking. Mike, you were saying they should have ended the whole night with one of their own instead of a Deep Purple track. Well, I was looking for some of the other dates on this tour, and when they were playing in Japan, they were the headliner. They weren't, it wasn't a double headliner bill like they did with Pat Travers' band. And on a lot of these dates, they were playing all night long as an encore. Well, they were some nights they were doing like 4 or 5 song encores. And they were doing all night long. They were doing Since You've Been Gone, Kill the King. You think a track like one of those would have fit in here great as an encore song ending the show proper?
I think Since You've Been Gone would have been my pick if I wanted one more song on here.
You had me at Kill the King. I would love to hear that one live with this lineup.
I've never, yeah, me too. I mean, that really jumped out at me. I'm like, wow, I'd love to hear Joe Lynn Turner sing Kill the King. Has he sang Kill the King on any of these other archival live albums that you know of? I'm just curious.
I don't think I have anything like that.
I
I
don't
don't have
think so.
every I don't have everything Rainbow yet in my collection. There's still a couple newer archival box sets and live albums and things that I don't have, but I don't think I've heard him sing it.
Yeah, I think he's only revisited Lost in Hollywood on one of his undercover albums in the studio. Um, from my experience looking through some of his solo live albums, he doesn't tend to do very many Rainbow tracks. At least the ones that, maybe his tour, when he goes out on tour these days, it's packed with Rainbow, but I'm talking about like the 2000s, his live albums from that era.
Okay.
Yeah. But just to finish off about Smoke on the Water, I was going to say, to be fair, this is the only place that you would be able to hear Smoke on the Water because Purple had been broken up for a while and Sabbath was
True.
still 2 years out from touring with Ian Gillan.
That's true.
And then the following year, Purple would reunite.
Was Gillan not playing Smoke on the Water?
You are correct, actually,
Okay.
about that. Gillan was. Sorry, I am, wow,
Well,
just flat out wrong.
at least we know Whitesnake were not.
Yeah.
So this was during the Difficult to Cure tour. Would you have chosen any other songs off of Difficult to Cure on this album besides what we received? Or do you think they got it right with what we have
I'm leaning towards they got it right. I wasn't missing anything. If anything, I was just missing songs that hadn't been written yet.
here? Okay.
Like you mentioned, Street of Dreams.
Death
I love
Valley
that song.
Drive.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think they got it right. I really find this mixture of tracks and eras of Dio, because you have now eras of Dio, eras of Rainbow, because you now have three eras to represent. I think it's a good balance. And as was mentioned earlier, I think by Harrison, is that they were playing some more Bonnet stuff here that might have been dropped a couple tours down the road. And I have a Rainbow Live box set. It's 3 discs of Graham Bonnet versions of Rainbow tracks, and it's all very bootleggy sounding. It's a nice looking box, but it's very bootleggy sounding, and I think it's like 7 tracks per disc. This is a much better value of a live album than anything in that Graham Bonnet box set. 10 tracks, right? Not including Over the Rainbow, which you could almost track as a separate intro.
Yes.
10 tracks, a good solid. I didn't do a graph. I should have come into this prepared with graphs of like Dio era, Bonnet era, Turner era. But I don't.
Two Bonnets, three Dio, four Bonnet.
There you go.
Sorry, four Lynn Turner, I think,
Draw
and one
your
Deep
own
Purple.
draw your own mental graph based on Harrison's data that he just tossed out there. Really, I was kind of surprised because I have a lot of live albums in my collection. Okay, like I buy a lot of CDs, as you can see. And this is one that largely slipped through the cracks until Harrison brought it up in our discussions. And I was like, yeah, I have that. I recognize the title. I found the disc. Yeah, I remember listening to this vaguely. So I hadn't heard it in years. And I just really enjoyed this experience of playing it again. So, and I say this frequently, thank you for giving me the opportunity to revisit this album. Um, yeah, truthfully, I wouldn't change a thing. Especially after John confirmed at the beginning of the show that this is a full show. It's not a truncated set in any way. So yeah, I wouldn't change a thing. I love it.
And Harrison,
Yep.
you
I'm not familiar with Difficult to Cure, so the only tracks I know from that album are the ones on here. But similarly to Mike, what I love about this album is how it gives such a good look at all the eras of the band to date, and it gives them, I'd say, a fair showing, all three. I think they got it right in terms of the mix. Even like Lost in Hollywood is never. If I had to put money on songs Joe Lynn Turner has sang with Rainbow, I would not have put it on Lost in Hollywood or even Love's No Friend. But they're great treats to see on here, and this is something that would be lost on the '82 tour, on the '84 tour, as the Joe Lynn Turner era would release more albums.
so you were mentioning you're not too high on the two songs from the Graham era, is that correct?
I was Love's No Friend was the one song that I like wasn't too familiar with going into, and it was the one that was like, well, this is a bit slow. Can we get to the fast stuff yet? But I still enjoy the song, but it's like if I had to skip something, it would be Love's No Friend.
I'm gonna
Okay.
do a hot take right here. I prefer Joe's version of Love's No Friend after
I
listening to
do
this
too.
album. So yeah, fair. Okay, so not so hot take. We're gonna call it a lukewarm take. I prefer Joe's version of Love's No Friend.
Yes, I wrote down here this power ballad like this works for Joe at this point, and I like this version more than what Graham does.
If I may expand upon that, I think a good general summation of this is that Joe really takes ownership of these songs when he sings them live. Um, respectively so though. Like he doesn't do anything that really, dishonors the originals. He doesn't go crazy and do his own twists all over it like you hear in so many national anthems at so many hockey and football games all through the United States where you don't recognize the anthem anymore. Joe does very honorable versions of these songs, but he does take ownership, and that's something you can really hear on this album, I think.
Very good. What do you both think of the version of Difficult to Cure? And I'll give my take after.
Well, let me go to my notes here. It's a 6:45 version, which is that short for the song? It struck
I
me as
think
short.
so.
Yeah, I just wrote it does all the things you expect it to do. It has a long Bobby Rondinelli drum solo, but I didn't find the drum solo particularly. I'm more of a Cozy Powell guy, I guess. But I like Bobby Rondinelli, don't get me wrong. I just didn't find the solo to be something that I don't know. If you're familiar with Mitch LaFon, the music journalist Mitch LaFon, he doesn't particularly care for drum solos. If he was going to take one thing out of a live show, it's a drum solo. And I do find, as a musical caveman, basically, I do find drum solos a bit hard to appreciate as a listener sometimes. And this one just kind of, I zoned out.
Well, fortunately, it's okay. My take on drum solos, only certain guys. I can hear Neil Peart, yes. Ginger Baker, yes. Tony Williams, the great jazz drummer, yes. Certain guys. Anybody else, keep it short. That's what Bobby Rondinelli does here. So I was like, okay, a drum solo, but it didn't go long enough to where my mind drifted at all. But yeah, just certain guys. I mean, I want to hear that drum solo. A lot of times when I hear a drum solo, it's okay, go to the bathroom. But
Yeah. My philosophy on drum solos is in and out, quick. If it's longer than 2 minutes, no, cut it off. My favorite drum solo is Tommy Clufetos on Black Sabbath's Live Gathered in Your Masses from 2013 because he thunders away for like a minute and 50 seconds and he finishes it's like in, out, quick, done, thunderous crashing finale and right back into the music. But to speak of Difficult to Cure, this would be my go-to live version of Difficult to Cure. However, I never look at a live album and go, oh, there's Difficult to Cure on here. I wonder how long it is this time. It's sort of like, I enjoy it, but it's like, uh, Lost in Hollywood and Long Live Rock and Roll that flank it are infinitely more exciting to me.
very good.
Can I just say I sounded too negative when I was talking about it. I do like Difficult to Cure. I mean, I grew up like every kid knowing that melody. I didn't necessarily know what it was, but every kid knew that melody. So, no, I love hearing Blackmore rip away on that thing. I really do. So I just want to reiterate that so I don't sound too negative.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing you just weren't too high on the drum solo.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
all.
Yeah.
I drifted off.
When it's the full band going along there, that's easily the best part.
And
Absolutely.
maybe I should also add, because why not? Maybe I should also add, that's one of the tracks that really shows Roger Glover blazing away in the bass. And as far as bassists that play with a pick, Roger Glover is one of my favorites. Phil Lynot's one of my favorites. And this is just a really good. I'm sure Roger was concentrating very, very hard when he was playing that bass part, but it's really good. It's really good.
Absolutely. This is very prog to me.
Yeah.
This is so prog. And I never thought of Rainbow as prog ever until I heard this live version of Difficult to Cure, which, by the way, for those of you out there who don't know, this was from taken out of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. So, but I think this is a wonderful instrumental. And yes, 6:45 is just the right time, even with the maybe minute 40-second drum solo. I think it works perfectly. Yes, the playing on here is very, very driving. And like I said, it's if you were to go back, if you go a little later, it's like more Dream Theater than you would think it would be Rainbow. And I say that as a compliment. But yes, I think it is a wonderful version of Difficult to Cure. Is there anything besides? I know, Harrison, you're not a big fan of Love's No Friend. Mike, is there anything on here that you're not a big fan of? Or do you like it as it is?
You know, It was kind of funny because the first couple of times I listened to this album, I had a Harrison kind of reaction to Love's No Friend where I didn't, it's kind of like, yeah, 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 let's get on to the faster stuff. I don't know. I think maybe Can't Happen Here. Maybe I could swap that out for something else.
Okay.
It's never been my favorite track in the world. I think they have catchier, but it's a shorty. It's a shorty and it's a firecracker, so it has its purpose, stuck between Catch the Rainbow and Lost in Hollywood, which has a bunch of solos too. So, yeah, you know what? As I stated earlier, I wouldn't change a darn thing. Wouldn't swap a thing. Let's just leave everything as is.
The only thing,
To clarify my negativity about the song, it's not a song that I dislike. I enjoy listening to it, but like when you pick up an album and you put it on and you hear the opening notes of the music, there are certain songs that you look forward to more than other songs, and Love's No Friend is not one of those for me.
okay, I differ with you, Harrison, on Man on the Silver Mountain. I think Joe Lynn Turner sounds wonderful on the other two Dio songs. Here, I think he's over singing at times. You liked something you really liked. I'm not as big a fan of. You, I'm thinking you're talking about the pre-chorus, and when he starts to oversing, I think you're a bigger you thought it was worked better than I did.
I do
I
have
just
one
love the
note here.
power behind his voice as his voice soars on like certain parts.
I do have one note here that I want to point out about Man on the Silver Mountain. I wrote that I hate when Joe sings "Take My Spirits
That's what was
High." That's the part I don't like, but I think he only does it
I
one
love
time
that.
on this version. I
okay.
think I've heard him do it. I think I've heard him overdo it more on other versions. So on this one, he only did that once, but it's like every time I hear it, I hate that. I hate that.
Yeah, that was the only yeah, that was where I was going. But I thought he did it twice in the song, but if it was once, okay, it's not bad.
I thought once, but
Oh,
then again, I might
I
hate
think
it
he
too
goes like
much.
a certain amount far, and then the next time he goes like even further up. But
okay.
I like that.
That makes more sense.
Yeah. To be fair, he is competing, not competing, but there's been Ronnie James Dio and Graham Bonnet before him, both fantastic vocalists. He does sort of have to establish his presence as being able to, so he's not punching up. He's like, I'm on these guys' levels. And I think on this album, he is on their level.
Oh, absolutely. So, Mike, how would you rank this album on a scale of 1 to 10?
Hmm. Let me think about that a moment. Sonically, it's really good. As I mentioned, there was that Bonnet era box set that I have that's not sonically very good. This could have been released, I think, officially at the time as this recording sounds today. Now, of course, they might have used technology to make it sound like it is today that maybe not was available in 1981, but I don't see a reason why this couldn't have been released in 1981 as an official live album. I'm gonna go a solid 8 out of 10.
Okay. Harrison, how would you rank Boston 1981 on a scale?
This for me is like a 9.5 or a 9.9. This is my second favorite live album of all time, second only to the long list of Iron Maiden live albums.
Okay.
So yeah, this is about as good as it gets for single disc live albums, I think.
Very good. I give this a 9. I love the recording. One thing I should have mentioned here, and I wouldn't change it. Sometimes you hear a little feedback.
Hmm.
But for me, this means this is 100% live. I think it sounds excellent. My only little quips would be holding the note a little too long in the pre-chorus on Man on the Silver Mountain. And there are a couple times where we have background vocals. I wish they were just a little bit louder. You
Hmm.
kind of have to strain to hear the background vocals. Musically, I think it kills. I don't think I would change anything on the track listing. Maybe I would end it with All Night Long as the encore, but we are getting the exact set that they played that night at the Orpheum Theatre in Boston. So Yes, excellent archival live album. I give this a 9 out of 10. So, for all of you watching, thank you so much for joining us today. We are discussing Rainbow, Boston, 1981. What do you think of Rainbow's music, and what do you think of this archival live album? What are your favorite songs on this album if you have heard it or you own it? What are your favorite albums by Rainbow? What is your favorite era of Rainbow? Ronnie James Dio, Graham Bonnet, Joe Lynn Turner, Doogie White, Ronnie Romero. Doogie White sang on Stranger in Us All. Am I correct?
Yes,
Yep.
and Black Masquerade.
The
Okay.
live album. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Please let us know in the comments what you think of Rainbow. Oh, and one more thing. Have you ever seen Rainbow live? Please let us know in the comments. Mike, Harrison, thank you so much for joining me today. And thank you, Harrison, for recommending this live album that certainly does not get enough love or recognition. Rainbow, Boston, 1981. So, what do you guys have in store for us on Grab a Stack of Rock? The Iron Maiden series has been tremendous, and I know you got some other things lined up as well.
Yeah, the Maiden series is never ending, but we do have a couple of fun live episodes coming up. We're going to be doing more of those this year, I think, than last year. And depending on when this airs, we have a fun one coming up. I won't spoil the topic. We have a fun one coming up with Mr. Peter Kerr from Rock Daydream Nation that will be live on the 24th of April, and we have another live one that we're going to be doing with Bicycle Legs from Australia on the 17th of April. That one I can reveal is about lenticular cover art. Harrison is a big fan of, those 3D looking covers where you shift them and the image changes. So we're doing a live episode on lenticular cover art. There's a great example. And we're going to be showing off all of our lenticular CDs on that date. So check us out live.
Excellent. I can assure you this will be out before April 24. This will air on Saturday, April 18, 2026 at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Then, folks, 12 hours ago, we just did lenticular cover art with Bicycle Legs. So go check us out on the Grab a Stack of Rock channel.
There you go. Awesome. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Do what you love, and we'll talk to you soon.